Welcome to a breaking news episode of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast. We're going to mark this as episode 106, and I am joined today by my longtime friend and somebody who I sent down a very bad career path years ago, Jim Durbin with Respondable Recruitment Marketing. Maybe another time we'll talk about the career path, but it has something to do with you public speaking in Arkansas, right?
That's true. It aces.
So before we get into the meat of the conversation today, Jim Durbin, aka the Indeed Whisperer, tell us a little bit about like what you do, what Respondable Recruitment Marketing is, and then we can kind of get into the news that you broke earlier today.
Right. Well, I'm a marketing consultant for talent acquisition. I was a director of TA inside. I understand advertising, programmatic, employer brand, and sourcing because I've been in every step of recruiting, from staffing to corporate to RPO to headhunting. What I do is I help TA departments understand kind of this new world of AI, tech, data, marketing, advertising. Just help them train that next generation of TA leaders to understand how tech's affecting them and what process changes they need to do to be more effective.
Awesome. So, Jim, I understand that you heard, and we're not going to get into the where, how, what, whatever, but you got some news. I think you were saying like yesterday evening or late yesterday, maybe also some today, about a pretty big change that Indeed is making that I don't know if very many people, even in talent acquisition departments, like really understand the significance of it. So maybe you can kind of start us off by sharing with us kind of what you shared on LinkedIn. And I'm going to put up a QR code for those who are watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, etc. You can snap that and go right to Jim's post. But maybe you can kind of tell us what you were sharing there.
Sure. Well, the headline is, as of June 2025, as of right now, single source feeds from third-party agencies will no longer be accepted by Indeed to ingest into their algorithm. What that means is XML feeds from programmatic agencies and others aren't going to be accepted, with the condition being that the ATS is always already integrated. So let me break that down. Your career site usually has an ATS. When you go to Indeed and you post jobs, or you let your agency do it for you, someone applies for that job, that candidate goes directly into your ATS so your recruiters can see it. So it's not going to affect you unless you have an agency, but they do a lot of things from employer branding to programmatic. And the way we've always done for over 20 years is using something called XML feeds. And XML feeds are a way to cleanly put our jobs in a way that Indeed likes: the right titles, the right categories, the right salary, benefit information. So it's a way for us to cleanly put that information and choose what we send directly into Indeed. That is now coming to an end, and I'm not going to be able to speculate on the reasons why, but this is a pretty big deal to everybody who has an agency partner, and the agencies themselves have to scramble because now they're not going to be able to clean that data up from our ATS and send it over. Now this comes directly from your ATS, which is famously has dirty data, has a lot of old jobs, a lot of mistakes in it. There's no way for them to clean it. Now they have to fix it through a job request API, which is brand new to them, and they have to go kind of learn, how do I begin to adjust these jobs? This is, as I wrote in the column, like earth-breaking news. This is the asteroid impact. It's too early to say. We're not going to say, oh, people aren't going to survive or programmatic's dead or anything crazy like that. I don't think that's the case. The agencies are very bright. They've got good people working for them. There's already several workarounds. And we already know some of the answers, which are TA clients are going to have to clean up their own ATSs. The strange thing about this was Indeed's pushing this onto their agencies. And the question really is, are they aware of the second order effects of this? Why are they doing it? And what will the agencies end up having to do to adjust their business models to pushing jobs directly into the Indeed system?
So, this is, it's a little bit of, I don't know what people would call like inside baseball, because it sounds very technical.
Right.
And I could see a lot of people in talent acquisition who are focused on identifying candidates, interviewing them,
Exactly,
selecting, hiring them, whatever, and basically saying, hey, we're going to work with this advertising agency, this programmatic job ad vendor, in large part so that we don't have to deal with all of these technical issues. And now it kind of seems like, at least in some cases, it's going to be punted right back to TA. So the Radancies of the world, the Veritones, the Appcasts, etc. If you're a typical client, Fortune 1000, maybe a government agency that does a lot of hiring, there's a very good chance that you're working with those vendors to get your jobs, not just to Indeed, but to LinkedIn, talent.com, our college recruiter, we get feeds. And so if I understand correctly, Indeed is basically saying, as of today, if you're an employer and you want to send a new feed to Indeed through Radancy, Veritone, Appcast, etc., no, we're not going to take that. It's going to have to come right from your ATS. You're going to have to give us the disposition data, right? Who applied, who got an interview, who got an offer, who got hired, etc. If you're an existing client, you've already got a feed in place with Indeed, the clock is ticking. Probably in a month or two, there you're going to have to find a new solution. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close directionally. The problem
Okay.
is I wasn't sitting in the room with the Indeed executives when they made the decision. I wasn't on the calls
You weren't
with
in
the
the
recruitment
room when
agency
it
department.
happened?
No, no, my spies can't break into their headquarters. Um, no, it's nothing like that at all.
Okay.
So there always, as there always is, our great complaint. I like Indeed. I even understand the move, and while I think it's heavy-handed and it's going to have some repercussions, and I think the problem is the communication. Like there's some things we
Okay.
just don't know. So the announcement said new feeds, but
Yeah.
it also says you can't create new ones or maintain ones. Well, what is a new feed? Does that mean a new client request? Does that mean if I come work with you, you can't send a feed over? But if I'm already working with you, I can't send corrections to that feed, because that's what new or maintain sounds like. And when you ask people, there's new or both. There's just a lot of bad information that's floated around. So hopefully, Indeed's ready to clarify this pretty quickly, because I do know every agency right now is scrambling to get their developers ready to work on that API feed. How are they going to work around this problem? Or in some cases, how do you change your business model? Remember, a
Yeah.
lot of the agencies work on commission. So one of the
Yes.
beauties of it is you cannot be doing your job in TA because you're working on putting people to work, not trying to make your data clean in your ATS. Like no one gets awards or raises for making sure your jobs are perfect. But that makes a big difference to advertising. So what happens is the agencies came along and say, we'll do that work for you. We won't charge you at all for it because we're making commission feeds.
Yeah.
Well, this is a point where if you're not paying for it, you can't really complain about it. The agencies won't be able to go into your system and clean things up. They're what's known as a downstream effect. They're going to have to go upstream, which means every time you post a job, every time you clone a template, the way you decide to do so won't be clean anymore. And it's coming right out of your ATS. So all of a sudden, it's like the last 15 years of technical debt and process debt have accumulated. And Indeed saying, you're going to have to hire somebody. They're not saying it, but they're pushing it. You're going to have to hire somebody to do this correctly, because it's going to drop your feed. If you just pulled most ATS feeds right now, they're horrifying because no
Yeah.
one's had to clean it up. It's like that closet you haven't looked in. You just throw stuff in it and someone else will worry about it. You have someone else clean the front room, but no one goes in and cleans your closet. That's exactly the point that we're at. And I would point out this is something Indeed has done before. When they did the CPA move 2 years ago, the one that they rolled back,
Yeah.
over and over and over again, they told people, you're going to have to hire admins to do this. I can't answer in 72 hours. You're going to have to. Now, they backed off from that because a lot of their small businesses raised so many complaints that there was no way for them to handle it. So that's a dead issue right now. But this feels like it's going the same way. Like, why the ATS? I think you talked about it earlier. It's disposition data, which is for those, it's staged. And so when you report it, your recruiters are in there and someone goes through an interview through the different stages. Did they get hired? Did they get the offer made? Did they get the offer turned down? That's very important for Indeed, because if it can point out that, it can point out the quality and say, I can charge you $700 a hire now rather than $40 a candidate because you got the hire. And I guess you'd be happy about it. So that's the only reason I could think of why they would acquire ATS data, because everybody knows this stuff isn't good because they scrape it. They currently scrape it. And it's just an odd thing. It's like Indeed saying you have to change. And I'm in this weird position where I agree we need to change. My whole business is based on how TA can do a better job of working with their vendors.
Yeah.
This still seems heavy-handed. So because we're not prepped for it and your budgets aren't that flexible. If you don't have an admin, you want to change process. Think if you're a travel job like trucking or travel nurses, you can't post the job in the city that you're in because no one's going to look for it. You have
Right.
to post it around other places. How is that going to work if you can't do geo expansions? What do you do if you're open to relocation? Like they've got some small filters, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. Um, and here's the biggest one, Stephen. What is an ATS? Is it because it says all third party feeds? Someone
Yeah.
asked me about
It
Phenom.
and I just want to interrupt you because from what I understand, it did not say applicant tracking systems. It said third-party feeds, which would
Yes.
include ATS, but not be limited to them. So I think you and I are
Well,
inferring
the
it,
ATS integration. So
yeah, but
it
it's
only
clearly
counts
going to
if
be
you
the
have an ATS
programmatics. It's
integration.
clearly going to be the advertising agencies. But then there's
Right.
this other group that I think you're about to talk about too.
Well, the ATS integration is very important. So if your
Yeah.
ATS is integrated with Indeed, you can't have a feed. If some like I was talking to a client today, they don't have an ATS. Their agency creates the jobs for them and then sends them over. So they're in the
Okay.
clear. I was like, lucky you. That was an easy call today. But that's important if you have your native ATS. And that's why we think it's about disposition data, is because they want to get access to the ATS. But what do you do with something like Phenom or the CRMs or Paradox? Are those ATSs? Are those the integrations they're talking about? Because most people who have, not most, but Phenom and Workday is a very common pairing, because
Okay.
Phenom, they want you to schedule interviews or they want you to be able to ask questions, things that the Workday ATS won't allow you to do. Does that mean that Phenom no longer can send a feed as well and it has to be Workday? I don't know. I would love to know. If someone finds out, please call me and tell me and I'll spread it far and wide. But this
Yeah.
is the problem with these announcements. They start off saying this is what we're going to do, and when you have questions, there's nobody you can turn to. I think that's that's still the scariest part about all this.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, that you and I are in agreement that there's a really, really good, actually multiple really, really good reasons why Indeed is doing this. Like some of it is it's just good business for them, probably. Like they're it seems to me like what it's going to result in is kind of like a dual system. You're going to have employers using advertising agencies, programmatics, et cetera, and sometimes those are kind of the same thing to send out a feed to every job board other than Indeed.
Right.
And then you're going to have a separate feed essentially from the ATS just for Indeed. So Indeed can kind of carve out its own budget and it doesn't have to enter into this derby of whoever delivers the click the fastest gets the money. They can focus more on quality instead of speed. Where the other job boards that are in the programmatic feed, we're all in a race to deliver the clicks and applications before the budget runs out. So there's a big advantage there to Indeed. Plus the
Absolutely.
disposition data, right? The disposition data giving Indeed access to that. Yes, it gives Indeed some more leverage, a power to maybe change how they charge you, how much they charge you, at what point they charge you. But it's also, I think, in the best interest of the employer and the best interest of the candidate, because Indeed can then see these kind of candidates are applying. We're going to give you more of those. Those candidates are going to be interviewed, hired, etc. So over time, Indeed can do a much better job of sending you much higher quality. That's good for everybody.
And that's what Chris Himes said that we were going to do last
Yeah,
year when they first launched this. The problem is that's a very, very good theory. As long as everybody else plays along, gives them what they want, that data is what they think it is, and nobody falls for the, oh, I did hire, I don't have a problem paying you more. So it's basically saying, just give me your stuff and we'll be fine. And that's a very dangerous place to be. What happens when it breaks? What happens when they change their prices? What happens when they can't deliver? Like there's a lot of things that go along with that. I get the theory. I get what they're trying to do. I think what's really going to happen is what happened with LinkedIn for a lot of places. We were so used to buying LinkedIn recruiter seats and job slots. When they started selling 3-year deals and then raising the prices, a lot of people started looking at that and then they cut that out entirely because they realized we weren't even using it. This is finally going to force TA to put an eagle eye on all of that spending that we do. And I think the ultimate is we may realize how much waste is involved, not because of Indeed. It's not their fault. If you do things correctly, I still like them. We get lots of candidates. There's
oh hell yeah,
quality in there. There's a lot of waste, but some of that happens in advertising, right? That's just an
right. That's
acceptable risk.
it's not a guarantee. It's a numbers game.
And they're still the best for quality and the best for volume. But I think there's a point where you're like, well, maybe if I started changing what I do, if we get better at this game, all of a sudden, Indeed's not 90% of your volume, it's 50%. With the new
Hmm.
AI sourcing tools and others are out there, you begin to say, hey, maybe these costs have dropped. Why am I throwing all this money trying to find some kind of person in Janesville, Wisconsin, when I know they're not going to be there? You can't just throw money at a problem, which is what we've been doing. We throw money at a problem, we write one check, and we don't pay attention to our house. And we're going to have to make that change just because that, or you just do whatever they tell you to. And it's
Yeah.
going to be very interesting to see if we're willing to finally make that change, because we're stretched, we're burnt out. TA departments are talking about getting cuts. They're not talking about growing. Paying for an admin or changing your process. Think of it this way. You open a job and it's open, say, for 9 months because it's a hard job to fill. You can't advertise that the whole time because that job's 9 months old. So you can't have an old job open because nobody will click on it, or if they do, the cost is enormous. But you can't close it because it's part of your reporting metrics.
Hmm.
So not all jobs are the same. Some jobs get opened up. Sometimes you'll have 40 warehouse people. Is
Hmm.
that one ad? Are you supposed
And
to close that? What if
you're
it's
just
evergreen?
continuously recruiting for the same role in the same location. It's an evergreen ad. There's
Exactly. And
nothing
Indeed doesn't
fake
have an
about that.
answer for that. They're like, I don't know. And honestly, if you
Mm.
ask them, they honestly don't know, because most of them haven't done this job. I think that's the most damning thing about all of this is they don't understand the administrative burden this is going to put on people. And unfortunately, TA has two ways of doing things: throwing money at it or shutting the budget off entirely. So
Ah,
this will be interesting. Are you willing to make process changes? Are you willing to look at what you're supposed to be doing and make those changes and be responsible? The result would be you're going to be able to read your reports correctly. Oh my goodness, you can trust your source of hire, but somebody's got to be sitting there minding the store. And right now, there's not enough of them out there.
wow.
It's not
That's
an easy job because every TA director came from recruiting. They're good with people. They're good with managing recruiters. They're good with doing compensation data. They're not good at tech, data, and finance, because why would you be good at those things? That's
yeah,
not
yeah,
what your
yeah.
job was for 20 years.
Right, right. One closing note, and then I know you've got stuff to run to, and we don't want to go. Well, I'd love to go for 40 minutes, but we can't. But for those who are not familiar with APIs, which is what kind of Indeed is saying you got to move to. So XMLs, like you said, have been around for a couple decades. I like to joke that they were first created by a programmer who literally worked shoulder to shoulder with Joseph Stalin in 1952, because I feel like they've been around forever.
Right. It feels like a
And
piece of Soviet technology. Yeah.
yeah, it does.
You
It's
just
like
bang on it and it works. Right.
it works. It's like the AK-47. It's like you can put that thing in mud or whatever, and it will keep firing. And that's why so many like people around the world will go to an AK-47. There's much better technology out there that works a lot better, but it's reliable and it works and it's the standard.
Right.
APIs, there's a lot of stuff about them that are a lot better, but there's no standardization. And the technical documentation, I can tell you as an owner of a job board where we are told to like, oh, just get the jobs from our API.
Just look at the API.
Holy crap. Like I remember probably 5, 6 years ago, it's a little bit of a different situation, is I think we were trying to integrate with Greenhouse and it was awesome. API was great. The documentation was great and exactly what you're describing. So we get that and looking at the employer's jobs, and the data was shit. Pardon my French. It's like we couldn't, there was no standardization. You had job titles in city fields and whatever. And it was just a mess. So not at all Greenhouse's issue. It was the client. And probably they had 20 different recruiters in there, each just trying to get their recs up as quickly as possible. And
Yep.
nobody was going back and closing them. And that's gonna be the case here.
Yes.
And like you say, this is not just a, oh well, if we don't send the jobs via XML, fine, we'll just switch over to the API and just make that happen the next 12 minutes. No, this could literally take some employers months to
Yes.
to be able to figure this out. And
I
some of
think
the
that.
ATS, their APIs are from 1952.
Oh yeah.
Not the greenhouses of the world, but some of the older ones. The APIs are themselves a mess. So if you're going to try to, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think maybe next week there'll be some clarity coming out
Hopefully.
of Austin, kind of down the road from you. Um, and we'll see. Well, Mr. Indeed Whisperer, as always, super enlightening. People should definitely go over, if they are not already following you on LinkedIn, do so. There's nobody who knows this shit better than you. So thank you so much for sharing.
One of some. There's some, but we all talk.
Mm, I'm not
It's
sure.
kind of you to say.
All right. Cheers, my friend.
Thanks, Stephen.